How people think war movies are about hero shots and swelling music and somebody limping home with a medal. No. Think about the brutality of Black Hawk Down, and then multiply it. Or remember how hopeless all quiet on the Western Front felt when Paul dies right before the armistice. Now strip away even that thin layer of meaning. This list is worse. This is not sacrifice with glory. This is rot, hunger, fire, snow, screaming, and the kind of endings that make you sit in silence and question why we ever romanticized war in the first place. Number 10. The Thin Red Line, 1998. Let's start with the least brutal on this list. Least brutal does not mean gentle. It just means the horror here is quiet, slow, creeping. The Thin Red Line is not interested in blood spray for shock value. It is interested in something more disturbing. It wants to show you how war eats the inside of a person. The film follows American soldiers during the Battle of Guadalcanal. Beautiful tall grass, blue skies, sunlight on water. It looks like a nature documentary at times. That is the trap. Then the shooting starts. Men crawl through grass not knowing where the bullets are coming from. One soldier takes a round to the face and drops mid-sentence. Another screams for his mother. A captain sends wave after wave of young men up a hill, knowing most of them will not make it. You feel the panic. You feel the confusion. There is no clean battlefield. There is mud, sweat, fear. What makes this film horrible is not just the deaths. It is the spiritual collapse. Soldiers question God while stepping over bodies. They stare at dead Japanese troops and see boys just like them. There is a moment where the enemy bunker is taken, and instead of triumph, you get blank stares. Exhaustion, shame. Some men survive physically, but they are not coming home whole. Something is ripped out of them. The film keeps asking this one quiet question. What is the point? And it never gives you comfort. Number 9. Black Hawk Down, 2001. This one is loud, relentless. No poetry here, no soft sunlight in tall grass, just dust and bullets and the sound of metal tearing through flesh. Black Hawk Down drops you into Mogadishu and never lets you breathe. The mission is supposed to be simple, quick in and out, grab a target, go home. That is the lie every war movie starts with. And then a helicopter gets hit, then another. And suddenly the sky is falling and the streets turn into a maze of gunfire. What makes this brutal is the pace. It does not slow down. You watch young soldiers get pinned behind walls that do not stop bullets. You watch medics try to hold in blood with their bare hands. One soldier takes a round that severs an artery, and the camera does not look away. There is no heroic music swelling. There is just panic, shouting, shock. And then there are the 2 Delta snipers. They volunteer to defend a crash site. They know what it means. They ask to be dropped anyway. They are outnumbered, surrounded. They fight until they cannot fight anymore. That is not cinematic glory. That is a death sentence carried out in real time. Some men do make it out. Yes, but the movie does not feel like survival. It feels like endurance. Like trauma that will echo for decades. When the surviving soldiers run through the streets at the end, it is not victory. It is desperation. They are just trying not to die. The brutality here is mechanical, modern, chaotic. No grand speeches, no clear enemy lines. Just urban warfare where death can come from any window. Number 8. The Bridge on the River Kwai, 1957. This one tricks you. It looks like a classic, polished, almost dignified. You hear that whistling march and you think maybe this is an old-fashioned war movie about grit and discipline. It is not. The story centers on British POWs forced to build a bridge for the Japanese in Burma. At first, it feels like survival through pride. Colonel Nicholson insists his men maintain standards, keep order, build the bridge well, show the enemy British superiority. It almost plays like a chess match between officers. And that is where the horror creeps in, because this is not just about physical suffering, though that is there. Men beaten, starved, worked in brutal heat. It is about psychological collapse disguised as honor. Nicholson becomes obsessed with building the perfect bridge. He convinces himself that discipline equals dignity, that craftsmanship equals resistance. But it does not. The bridge becomes his monument, not to survival, to madness. His men are dying around him. The war is raging, and he is worried about engineering. Then the finale hits. The Allied commandos plant explosives. Chaos erupts, gunfire, confusion. And in the end, the bridge explodes. Major characters are killed in the blast. Nicholson himself realizes too late that he has been serving the enemy all along. Madness. All that final word lingers. This film is horrible in a quieter way. It shows how war warps the mind, how a man can convince himself he is doing the right thing while digging his own grave. Yes, some characters technically survive, but the central figures who carried the story are gone, dead, broken, discredited. Number 7. Gallipoli, 1981. This one hurts in a very specific way because it begins with sunlight, laughter, and hope. The story in Gallipoli begins far from the battlefield. Two young Australian sprinters race across bright beaches, joking and dreaming about the future. At first, it almost feels like a coming-of-age story. Youth, friendship, and ambition fill every moment. But that warmth slowly turns into dread. The young men enlist in World War I, believing the patriotic speeches and recruitment posters. And they imagine adventure, glory, and stories they will bring home. The early journey even feels light, training camps, long travels, and the growing bond between friends who believe they are stepping into something meaningful. Then they arrive at Gallipoli. Everything changes. The trenches are cramped and suffocating. The air is thick with dust and fear. Orders begin to feel strange and pointless. Officers far from the front command wave after wave of young soldiers to charge across open ground straight into machine gun fire. It is not strategy. It is a meat grinder. What makes the film so devastating is how pointless the deaths feel. There is no breakthrough waiting, no heroic victory on the horizon. Just whistles blowing and boys climbing ladders into certain death because someone higher up refuses to admit the attack has failed. And you watch soldiers leave the trenches knowing they will be shot within seconds. Messengers run desperately to stop the next charge, but time runs out. Then the final attack begins. One of the young runners, who once raced freely across sunny beaches, sprints across open ground. The camera freezes the moment bullets strike him. Number 6. Fires on the Plain, 1959. This one is not loud. It is not filled with explosions or dramatic battles. It is worse. It is quiet starvation, slow decay, a man wandering through a landscape that no longer feels human. The story in Fires on the Plain follows a Japanese soldier abandoned in the Philippines near the end of World War II. He is sick, weak, and completely cut off from his unit. The army he once believed in has collapsed. There are no clear orders, no rescue, only scattered groups of soldiers barely clinging to life. The jungle offers no comfort. It is not a lush paradise, but a suffocating wilderness where every step feels pointless. Soldiers wander like ghosts through the trees. They are no longer fighting an enemy. They are fighting hunger, and hunger wins. As food disappears, desperation spreads. Men become suspicious, paranoid, and hollow. Ammunition no longer matters because survival is no longer about combat. It is about finding something, anything. Eventually, the unthinkable appears: cannibalism. The film does not present it with dramatic music or shocking spectacle. It shows it quietly, almost casually. The protagonist slowly realizes that the meat some soldiers are cooking is not animal. There are no speeches about morality, only exhausted faces and empty eyes. That's what makes the film so disturbing. It strips away every illusion of heroism and shows what happens after defeat, when armies collapse and survival replaces every other value. The soldier wanders through ruined villages and encounters men who have completely lost themselves. Some laugh at nothing. Number 5. Stalingrad, 1993. Now we enter pure frostbite hell. The story in Stalingrad does not ease the viewer into its brutality. There is no promise of honor or redemption waiting at the end. From the beginning, a group of German soldiers arrive on the Eastern Front, carrying the usual confidence of an army that believes it is still powerful. But history already tells us the truth. The Battle of Stalingrad was one of the greatest military catastrophes of the war. And at first, the soldiers joke and complain like ordinary young men. They believe they are still part of an unstoppable war machine. Then the cold arrives, and the machine begins to collapse. The snow is not beautiful. It is suffocating. Endless white fields where bodies vanish overnight. Men freeze inside foxholes. Fingers turn black with frostbite. Supplies never arrive. Food disappears. Orders become meaningless as officers cling to pride while the soldiers beneath them slowly starve. What makes the film so brutal is the slow erosion of life. Nobody dies in a glorious moment. They fade away. One soldier is shot and left screaming because no one can safely retrieve him. Another steps on a mine. Another simply lies down in the snow and never stands again. The civilians deepen the tragedy. German soldiers encounter starving Russian families whose fear is just as visible. The film refuses to draw clean moral lines. Instead, it shows human beings trapped inside a disaster created by distant leaders. As the Soviet encirclement tightens, the surviving soldiers attempt a desperate escape. They stumble through the snow with almost no strength left. There is no rescue coming. The cold becomes the final enemy. One by one, they collapse. Number 4. The Ascent, 1977. This one is ice cold, not loud, not chaotic, just slow moral suffocation. The story in The Ascent follows 2 Soviet partisans during World War II searching for food for their starving unit. That is all. No massive battles, no heroic offensives. Just 2 men walking through endless snow trying to survive another day. Then they are captured. From that moment, the film tightens like a noose. One of the men is sick and barely able to stand. The other is stronger and more practical. They are brought before collaborators and Nazi officers who offer them a choice: give up information and survive, or refuse and die. That is the battlefield here. Not bullets, but choice. The interrogations are quiet and deeply unsettling. No dramatic torture scenes, just cold rooms, silent pressure, and the crushing knowledge that one word could save your life while condemning others. One man breaks. It does not happen in a villainous way. It happens in a painfully human way. He is afraid. He wants to live. Slowly he convinces himself that survival is the smarter path. Eventually he agrees to collaborate. The other refuses. And that is where the film becomes devastating. The man who refuses is publicly executed, hanged in the open snow. His face is calm, almost peaceful. The camera does not rush away. It forces the audience to witness the moment in silence. The collaborator survives, technically, but the film makes it clear that his survival comes at a terrible cost. He walks away breathing, yet hollow. The community sees him differently. More importantly, he sees himself differently. In choosing life, he loses who he once was. Number 3. All Quiet on the Western Front, 2022. This one is a punch to the throat. No elegance, no romance. Just mud, metal, and the slow realization that patriotism is a lie sold to teenagers. The story begins with schoolboys cheering, encouraged by teachers who call them the Iron Youth of the Fatherland. They sign up smiling, convinced they will return as heroes. That optimism is the film's first cruelty, the promise of glory before the truth of war. Soon they arrive at the trenches of the Western Front. There is nothing heroic here. The trenches are soaked with mud and lined with bodies. Rats crawl across the dead. Shells explode without warning. Men scream for medics who cannot reach them. When soldiers are hit, the camera does not turn away. You see the confusion in their eyes, the shock, the slow realization that they are dying. What makes the film especially brutal is how mechanical the killing becomes. Tanks roll forward, crushing bodies into the earth. Flamethrowers turn men into living torches. In one unforgettable moment, a young recruit stabs an enemy soldier during a frantic struggle inside a crater. Instead of dying instantly, the man slowly bleeds out. The boy sits beside him, forced to listen to his choking breaths for agonizing minutes. There is no music, just the sound of someone dying. Then comes the final cruelty. The war is nearly over. Armistice papers are being signed. Peace is only hours away. But a general desperate for one last victory orders another charge. Paul runs with the others. By now, every friend he enlisted with is gone. The hopeful boy from the beginning is hollow. And just minutes before the ceasefire, he is killed. Minutes. His body is placed beside countless others. The war ends. Number 2. The Gray Zone, 2001. This one is almost unbearable. There is no battlefield in the traditional sense, no charging lines, no dramatic firefights. The setting is Auschwitz, where war becomes something far more terrifying: industrial murder. Systematic, precise, efficient. The film centers on the Sonderkommando, Jewish prisoners forced to guide other Jews into gas chambers and then burn the bodies, forced to assist in the machinery of their own people's destruction in exchange for a few more months of life. That is the horror. From the first moments, it becomes clear that nobody in this story is escaping. The men know they will eventually be killed to erase witnesses. Their survival is temporary, a delayed execution. What makes the film so brutal is the suffocating moral trap. These prisoners are stuck in an impossible position. If they refuse orders, they are shot immediately. If they obey, they survive another day, but carry unbearable guilt. They argue about revolt, about hope, about whether resistance even matters when death is inevitable. At one point, they attempt an uprising. It is fragile and desperate. They secretly smuggle gunpowder and plan explosions. For a moment, you want to believe it might succeed, that the machine might crack. It doesn't. The revolt is crushed. Men are executed. Bodies pile up again. The crematorium keeps burning. The film never allows distance. Smoke rises constantly. Victims' faces show confusion in the final moments before doors close. Prisoners move like machines because feeling anything would break them. What makes it even more devastating is the absence of heroism. There are no triumphant speeches or rescues. The Sonderkommando die, knowing the world may never fully understand the trap they were forced into. Number 1. Come and See. 1980. 5. This is it. On the edge of the abyss. If you think you have already seen brutal war movies, Come and See will challenge that belief immediately. The film does not feel like traditional cinema. It feels like a nightmare you cannot wake up from. Instead of heroic battles or triumphant victories, the story traps the viewer inside the slow psychological destruction of a child witnessing the collapse of humanity. The story follows a young Belarusian boy named Florya, who eagerly joins Soviet partisans during the Nazi occupation. At first, there is excitement in his eyes. He digs up a rifle from the sand and believes he is stepping into something heroic. War, in his mind, feels like adventure. There is curiosity, energy, even pride. But that innocence does not last long. Very quickly, the film descends into horror. Villages are raided without warning, and civilians are dragged from their homes. Families are separated. Elderly villagers and children are pushed into barns while soldiers surround the buildings. You understand what is about to happen even before it does. The doors are locked. The barn is set on fire. What makes the moment unbearable is that the camera refuses to look away. Smoke fills the frame. People scream and claw at the wooden walls. Faces press against the cracks while flames spread. Outside, soldiers laugh and pose for photographs as if the massacre were entertainment. The violence is not stylized or cinematic. It feels humiliating, cruel, and disturbingly real. Scenes of mass graves and grieving survivors deepen the horror. The film traps the viewer in close-ups of terrified faces, forcing you to confront emotions that cannot be escaped. War movies are not supposed to feel like this. They are supposed to inspire. These do the opposite. They strip away glory and leave only ashes. If you made it through this list, you know the truth. In real war, nobody wins. Some die fast. Some survive broken. Either way, nobody truly comes home.